What is a case of instant karma you witnessed? I watched an entitled angry man mistreat and scream at his server to the point of tears. Then he hitched up his belt and looked pleased with himself as he swaggered off the restaurant deck, tripped on the stairs, and face planted in the sand on the beach. This was a vacation in Florida. My wife looked mortified as I laughed right out loud at the guy. He got up, saw everyone staring and at least one person openly laughing, and quick stepped off down the beach. What a schmuck. Totally deserved that. Surprised more people didn't laugh. Story 2. Was buying some drinks at a Circle K one day while visiting someone in Florida, and these old tourists cut us in line, all the while complaining loudly about everything, how expensive everything is, how crowded the beach is, it's too hot, etc. They're also really rude to the cashier and take forever arguing about the price of the hot dogs they were buying or something. They leave, and as we walk out, we witness a seagull come and snatch the guy's hot dog right out of his hand. His wife then shrieks and proceeds to drop hers out of surprise. I know it isn't that big of a deal, but it was so freaking hilarious watching that happening that I still remember it 5 years later. Story 3. One day a few years ago, I was grabbing McDonald's near work to eat something last second before my shift. It was one of those 2-lane microphone deals. I blatantly finish ordering before the other lane before he stops on the gas to cut me off. His car breaks down right there, and I get to take my rightful turn in line. Story 4. We were driving home late from work one night, both bartenders, maybe midnight. We live in a small community, and we were at the 1/4 mile section that goes from 55 to 45 to 35 to 25. A giant lifted truck decided that he wanted to continue going 55. He was up our back, brights on, so close you couldn't even see his bumper. It was like his lights were in our car. Pretty much 2 seconds after one of us said, "Where's a cop when you need one?" a deputy passed us going the opposite direction and immediately flipped and pulled him over. Still gives me the warm fuzzies. Screw that guy. Story 5. Not 100% instant karma, but pretty quickly. So, you see, I work for a staffing agency. I'm a recruiter, pretty small team, and this was actually another recruiter on my team that this happened to. My coworker was working with this guy who was pretty sharp. He was a programmer. His company was doing layoffs, but he was told he wouldn't be affected. My coworker contacted him, chatted about the situation, and he said he would be interested in looking around. We just had a new client give us a position to help that fit his background. We lined up an interview pretty quickly. He interviewed and got the position. Great. It was even a little salary bump. Straight direct hire, no contract stuff. He goes in, works his first week. All is great, all smiles. Well, that next Monday shows up and he isn't there. The company calls us asking where he is, so my coworker calls him. He answers the phone and my coworker asks, "Hey, is everything okay? You no-call, no-show today over at XYZ company." And the guy proceeds to tell us, "Yeah, I never actually quit my job. I just took vacation for the week to see if I like the place. It was okay, but I'll just stay here." My coworker responds, "Man, is there anything I can do? This puts us in a tight spot. This is a brand new customer of ours. Can I do anything?" And the guy tells us, "Quite frankly, I don't give a crap what kind of position it puts you in, nor do I care if they are a new customer. I'm staying, don't call me again," and hangs up the phone. He got laid off the next week. Story 6. My wife was jogging and a man started driving slow and catcalling her, doesn't realize it's a red light and rear ends a truck, totally destroying his Prius. The cop stopped at the same red light and saw the whole situation. Cop laughed and asked my wife to fill out a witness statement. Story 7. Happened while I was visiting New York. I watched someone bend down to pick up a wallet someone ahead of them had just dropped. All of this was going down in the crosswalk, and I was in the passenger seat with my dad driving. Guy A, who picked up the wallet, began to run it to Guy B, who was already across the street, and while doing so, his wallet fell out of his pocket on the sidewalk/crosswalk area. Some dude in the bike lane rode up a little ways ahead, bent down and picked it up and just started heading off. Just grabbed it and began to ride away like a bunch of cars hadn't just watched him. My dad was about to say something when a cop car adjacent to us swerved in front of the cycler and made him give it back. Cycler bumped into the cop car and was trying to go around when he was tackled. I think they might have arrested him, but the light changed, so we couldn't stick around. Coolest instant karma I've ever seen. Story 8. Intoxicated guy at the bar started yelling at the bartender for cutting him off, called her witch multiple times, and then tried to scoot his bar stool back. Instead, it caught on the carpet and he fell backwards like a tree falling. It made a very audible thud, and of course, everyone stops what they're doing to look. He lay there for a minute, got up, and stumbled to the door as everyone continued to stare at him. Definitely never saw him again. Story 9. I was at an all-good festival once, and there was one of those dudes who was just pure, I don't know, shouting insults, screaming, throwing crap at people, just an animal. He was slightly uphill from a main intersection, only maybe 30 feet from the crowd. I was standing around waiting for a friend. The dude's campsite was total BS with some poorly planned tarp city thing held up by a nylon rope that was strung over a pickup truck and then secured by slamming a car door shut on it. Suddenly, the guy throws his beer at the crowd, crawls up on top of the car, and starts tight-roping it between the car and the truck. I was very impressed that he made it at least 2 steps before the rope slipped a few inches in the car door. The guy spreads his legs, and he dropped 3 feet straight onto the suspended rope. I've never in my life seen a guy wreck his jewels so hard. He spun around the rope in slow motion until he was upside down. Then the rope scraped across the roof of the truck, fell between the cab and the bed, partially collapsed the tarp city, and dropped the guy a couple more feet onto his head in the mud. The guy got up, shut up, looked a little embarrassed, and limped away as his infuriated friends boiled out of their wrecked home. Story 10. My first car wasn't the greatest vehicle, but I managed to scrape some money together to be able to afford it, and it was something I was proud of being able to have when I was young. I was out driving, running errands in an affluent part of the city when I came to a red light, and these 2 dudes around my age in some expensive car that was obviously paid for by their parents, with music blaring through their expensive subs, pull up beside me and are kind of snickering to themselves, taking a few glances at me every now and then. Whatever, it's fine. Eventually, the driver rolls down his window and asks, "Hey bro, want to put that thing to the test?" and starts revving his engine. Now, me being a little crap, I start revving my engine because I knew they weren't expecting me to do that. The 2 bros go, "Ooh," and then start getting fired up. Green light comes and we both slam on our accelerators, except I cap out at the speed limit. The 2 schmucks speed off in a big display and head around the bend. Now, the thing about this stretch of road is that there are usually cops set up with a few speed traps. Lo and behold, when I come around the bend, their car is pulled over to the side with a cop parked right behind them, lights flaring. They did not seem amused by my smile and wave as I passed by them. Story 11. Worked after school care for school-age kids. There's this one kid who was pretty obnoxious and got under everyone's skin. One day, I see him walk into the room, just needling another kid. He ends his provoking with a Nelson from The Simpsons, "Ha ha," spins around and face plants on the ground. The kid he was provoking gave him a ha ha back and walked off. Obnoxious kid gets up, dusts himself off, and humbly slinks away and is pretty quiet for the rest of the day. Story 12. Instant karma isn't always a bad thing. About 16 years ago, in my tiny Dodge Neon, I was at a red light, and I have no reason why, but I gave a homeless person all of the change in my ashtray. The light turned green, and I made my left turn, and a few seconds later, I was hit head-on by a full-size truck. When they were loading my car onto the tow truck, the driver asked, "How's the driver?" And I simply said, "I'm fine." He was shocked at first, and then once he realized I wasn't kidding, he said he'd been towing for 20 years and never seen anyone survive this extreme of an accident, let alone be standing there talking to him while loading up the car. Pretty sure I lived due to the good juju there. Story 13. Was on a road trip last week. Guy in the left lane was slowly passing a truck, so there were about 5 of us stacked up patiently waiting for the log jam to clear. Schmuck in a Mercedes breaks ranks into the right lane, speeds ahead, and tries to cut in to save himself 3 car lengths of trouble. All cars band together to not let him in. He almost ran the car behind me off the road and nearly sideswiped him before taking his rightful place in the back. Well, he was angry after that and was tailgating and in general driving like a schmuck. He eventually sped off well over 100 miles per hour. Saw him about 20 minutes later, pulled over by a state trooper, laughed my back off as I passed him. Story 14. I have a happy good karma story that happened to me a few months ago on vacation in San Francisco. Late at night, after a potluck and some drinks, my friend drove me to a BART metro station near her house and gave me directions to take the train back to my hotel. I walked in, paid my fare, and went underground only to find out I'd just missed the last train. Fortunately, my friend was awesome and gave me bus directions back, but there was another person who'd missed the same train, and he was in a far worse situation than mine. He was intoxicated, carrying massive bags of groceries and alcohol, and he was trying to get back to Richmond, the way I came from, and super far away. He also had no way to call an Uber. Feeling bad, I offered to call him an Uber and he could pay me back what he could. He only had $3, but so be it. I wasn't going to turn him down. We chatted a while until his ride came. He went off on his merry, inebriated way, and I went to catch my bus. Except when I got on, I realized it was a Muni bus, the other transit company, and so my BART fare wasn't transferable. I'd have to pay again. And then I realized I had no dollar bills left in my wallet. I spent it all on that useless fare. Panicking, I reached into my back pocket where I kept small change, while knowing I didn't have enough for the $2.50 fare. And that's when I felt the $3 that guy gave me. It was such a beautiful feeling. I think we were mutual guardian angels that night. Also, I realized halfway through the bus ride that I was going the wrong way, but that ruins the story, so I don't usually tell that part. I did manage to get back on the other side, to be fair. Story 15. Saw some lady road raging hard at a slow traffic going over a dangerous mountain pass. She was trying to run people off the road, trying to get around them. I've never seen anything like it. She could have ended someone. Saw her getting forcefully arrested by like 6 cops at the bottom of the mountain on the other side, face pinned to the hood and screaming. Story 16. I work at a movie theater. One afternoon, I was selling tickets at the box office when an older lady came up and asked me a question about our app. It's a Cinemark app. I, however, wasn't sure about the answer and told her that. She proceeded to say, very rudely, "Isn't it your job to know? Are you stupid or something?" Then she turned around and noticed a mall cop was writing her a ticket for parking in a handicap spot when she did not have a handicap plate or placard. She took off running, screaming, "Wait, stop, that's my car!" I couldn't keep the huge grin off my face for the rest of the day. I know, right? I bet she really wanted to use the app to dispute that parking ticket. Story 17. The washers and dryers in my apartment building are run through Bluetooth and an app you download on your phone. I figured that if I put my phone on airplane mode while simultaneously pressing the start button on the machine, the washer would start, but I wouldn't get charged. I was so proud, tried the same thing on the dryer, and it worked. Went to get my clothes out an hour later, and everything was covered in melted Hershey's Kisses. Story 18. I like going to the local fruit stand near my old job before work. It's a small family-owned and run place. A little kid was working the register and accidentally gave me back more than I gave them. I gave him back the money and correct the mistake, insisting it happens and not to worry about it. I'm not telling nobody. The kid must have told her kinfolk about 2 weeks later, and I didn't pay for fruit for the next month until I got another job. Karma works both ways. Story 19. I have a positive instant karma. Not sure that counts, but it's a good story. I took my 3 kids, 5 female, 5 male, 7 female, to a local carnival and feast. My wife had some girl brunch but didn't come. We parked kind of far, so to get to the rides, we had to walk through the concert field where people were staking their spots for the show later, tarps and all, etc. A young mom and her young daughter walked past us quickly, the mom holding chairs, tarps, etc., and basically had her hands completely full. So I catch up to her, ask her if she needs help, and take a couple of the bags from her. We followed them to a spot they had, dropped their stuff, chatted for a minute. She thanked me, and we walked off. Just as we left, my older daughter, 7, looked up at me and said, "That was really nice, Dad." Very cute. Right after she said that, a dad walking out of the feast handed and asked if I wanted some ride tickets they weren't going to use. So I took them and thanked him. Instantly, my daughter, same one, says to me, "Dad, that was karma. The tickets were karma for helping that lady." And she was so right. Such a great dad moment. Story 20. Helping my brother move out of his apartment after grad school. In the parking garage, trying to reposition the car to load up the TV or something. Some girl wants to get past us, so I start backing up, but she's crowding me like inches from my bumper. Anyway, she gets past and we load up. As we leave the parking lot, she's in the middle of the street having T-boned someone. Felt bad for the poor person she hit. Story 21. At a concert, my mom accidentally stepped on a lady's foot and she said sorry multiple times. But the very intoxicated lady wouldn't let it go and started a fight with my mom. Very bad idea. My mom's ex-MMA. Straight knockout. My mom met that lady again a year ago at an event for her work, and apparently the lady stopped drinking from what happened that night, being told by her friends she wouldn't leave my mom alone even after countless times of apologizing. Maybe it was good karma? Story 22. A girl in school used to tease everyone and just be generally annoying. She was tossing the stress ball around and aimed it at this one kid's head. Someone yelled, "Look out!" at him, so he looked up, saw the ball coming at him, and put up his hands in self-defense. It bounced off his arms and back at the girl and hit her right in the mouth. It was a soft, squishy stress ball, so it didn't hurt her, but we all openly laughed at her and her surprised expression, so she sat down quietly from embarrassment. She still kept being annoying, but she stopped throwing things at people's heads at least. Story 23. At a big sports tournament after a game and it's raining a bit, an aggressive driver can't be bothered with people rushing to their cars and almost runs over a kid, yells at people in his way and decides to weave around traffic to get out of the place quicker. There is a sawhorse blocking the exit. He's not supposed to go out. The rain is getting heavier. Everyone is watching this impatient person as he gets out of his car to move the sawhorse and then bypass the traffic line and pedestrian traffic due to self-entitlement. When he gets out to move the sawhorse or the barrier, he closes his car door and locks himself out of the car with the car running. Downpour ensues. Instant karma. Story 24. Was a lifeguard and the kid, 9 to 10 years old, kept running around on the pool deck. He clearly heard me several times yelling at him to walk and he just ignored me. Next time he ran, he slipped and fell flat and started crying. The only thing I said was, "That's why I told you to walk." And his mom definitely gave me the evil eye. I didn't give a crap though. That's what you get for not following the rules. Story 25. Not instant, but when I was a broke college student, the high schoolers down the street sideswiped my car so bad, my front door wouldn't open all the way and the mirror was gone. I confronted them but couldn't prove it, couldn't afford to fix it. The next week, they come screeching out of the neighborhood while I'm studying next to the second floor window. They crash headlong into a tree and total their car. I had a comfortable view as all four of them got out, and the driver was sobbing on the pavement till his mom came and screamed at him loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. Story 26. I live right between two cop jurisdictions. At the top of the hill is one, and at the bottom is the other. I do not mess around on that hill, as usually one is at the top and bottom. Headed to work one day, and some little BMW schmuck starts flashing me and passes. Sure enough, he is pulled over down the road, and I go on my merry way. Story 27. Last week, my youngest daughter had her last day of preschool. Between my two girls, we've been associated with the school for almost 10 years. My wife and I wanted to do something nice for them, so we offered to buy them Starbucks. As I'm about to enter the Starbucks parking lot, a guy runs a stop sign, narrowly missing me. He pulls in, I pull in next to him, I hurriedly scramble out of my car to beat him to the line. It was fun listening to them call my name for all 15 drinks before that guy got his. Story 28. Multiple times every day, teaching preschool where I remind a kid of a rule, they ignore it, then 30 seconds later end up crying because they hurt themselves, i.e. running in the classroom, going down a slide face first and smashing into the ground. The upside is that they learn a lot more from getting hurt than they do from me nagging, little buggers. And if you're enjoying the video too, please don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 29. Loaded up an egg in one of those water balloon slingshots to launch at someone's car. The thing snapped backwards and launched the egg straight toward the window of my own car parked nearby. The window was open maybe an inch and the egg entered that space and fantastically exploded all inside of my car. We were cleaning up tiny bits of eggshell even months later. Never egged another car again. Story 30. A few years back, me and my buddy were traveling around Germany and decided to go to Amsterdam. The trip there was an absolute nightmare. And long story short, we're on a bus around 11 p.m. because the trains broke down. We also haven't had a chance to eat since early that morning. Everyone on the bus is obviously miserable. While we're waiting to leave, we hear some talking behind us, and it turns out it's some old German woman's birthday. Everyone is singing and wishing her happy birthday when she says something I don't quite catch. So I ask the person behind me what she said, and they say that all she really wanted was some water. I happen to carry a water bottle with me religiously. I hold it up, give it a shake, and say, "Wasser?" I kid you not, their whole group started cheering and slapping me on the back. Then out of nowhere, a hand pops up and drops 2 sandwiches in our laps. We were eternally grateful to finally have something to eat, LOL. Story 31. I was waiting in line at Burger King, so while I was waiting and looking at the menu board, a bunch of high school kids from some team sport cut my queue. It was like 15 of them, and they grouped up and around and slowly went in front of me when I wasn't looking. I gave an annoyed look, but just waited in line. A cashier opened his counter and called for me, and I got right in front of all of them, even before the lady in charge of that sports team who was waiting on the other counter. Turns out good things do come to those who wait and don't wear matching jerseys. Story 32. Worked a volunteer shift at a local zoo for parking in the backside. We offered to show where people ought to park as the only entrance into the zoo is from the front. Wise guy and co., I think, is funny to speed up while approaching us, causing us to move out of the way. They thought they had made a smart move to park near the back, but quickly realized it was the end and very far from the entrance. 10 minutes later, they had the long drive of shame, and believe me, we laughed for the entire duration. Story 33. Started dating a girl a few months back, and her ex was just being a huge schmuck to her, threatening to fight me if he saw me, trying to start rumors, etc. Went out for drinks with the girlfriend, and of course, he showed up. Starts to get in my face at the bar and gets kicked out, rushes the door guy to get back in and is carried out and banned for that bar for life. Then I had another genius thought. What if I could do this at the bar next door? It's a smallish town. There are really only 2 bars worth going to for nightlife, and they're right next door to each other. So we went next door. He's waiting outside for me, but there's the usual "don't do it, bro" friends around him, so I make it next door without having to fight. Of course, he comes in, starts up his act all over again, and actually tries to fight me this time. He gets pulled off by a few people and is also kicked out of that bar for at least a while. Fight with your brain, folks, not with your fists. Story 34. Just last week, about an hour south of my town, a guy driving a truck tried to throw a cigarette out his window. We've had rain the past few days, but as of last week, it hadn't rained in like close to 3 months. Instead of the cig landing in the dry grass along the highway, it caught the wind, blew right back into his truck, and lit the whole goddamn thing on fire, completely destroyed. Story 35. I was waiting to put in at a boat ramp in Florida one day. It was a single ramp. The guy trying to take his boat out of the water was having a tough time backing his trailer down. His wife, I assume, and two kids were waiting on the dock. Some schmuck waiting to get out of the water starts screaming at him and heckling him. The first guy finally gets his trailer down the ramp. Meanwhile, a raging schmuck had docked his boat and started up the dock towards the poor boating newbie family guy, screaming and yelling. Raging schmuck punches the family guy and knocks him off the dock into the water. Two burly dudes that nobody was really paying attention to walk up, literally grab Raging Schmuck as Family Guy was falling in the water, throw him on the dock and handcuff him, then flash their FLDNR badges. They were undercover watching the boat ramp. There was applause and cheering from the folks waiting to put in and take out. Family Guy just wants to get out of there and go home, so he declines to press charges. The DNR guys apparently thought, "Aw, hells no," proceeded to tear the guy's boat and car apart, and ended up charging him with a BUI and every single nitpicky thing they could find wrong with his boat. It was a good day. Story 36. Maybe not quite instant, as the whole thing took maybe 5 to 10 minutes, but back when I worked at a hardware store, this dude threw an absolute fit because the system refused to refund one of the 16 items he was returning. Dude proceeds to scream at the top of his lungs, shout at, threaten, get in the face of, in order, me, the other cashier, the store manager, and about 3 other customers. He's told repeatedly to leave the store as he's no longer welcome there, but he refuses and instead stands in the entranceway screaming and shouting at every customer that walks in to not shop there because the store is ripping him off. Well, maybe 10 minutes or so into this whole episode, probably 5 or 6 of which he spent screaming at people entering the store, the cops show up and his face just falls so fast and he gets real quiet and starts trying to meekly make excuses like, well, you see, they wouldn't return my item, and but the cops are basically just like, dude, we don't freaking care. They told you to leave, get lost, and if you ever come back to the store, we're arresting you. And what's even more amazing is that we told him we were calling the cops and that they were on his way. IDK, whether he thought we were bluffing or he thought the cops would take his side or what, but yeah. The absolute best part, out of maybe 16 items he was returning with a total value of over $200, the one item that the system wouldn't return was a literal 35-cent PVC pipe fitting. He got the $200 worth of other items returned and got his money like he wanted, but then still felt the need to throw a massive tantrum over 35 cents. Story 37. Working in retail, a woman comes in angry that she can't do a refund on a gift without a receipt. I explain that all electronic merchandise has to have a receipt. She gets mad and tries to storm out, but trips over her own feet and face plants a metal pole. She managed to chip a tooth and try to sue us, but video evidence proves she did it to herself. Double karma. Story 38. Was in the lunch line in elementary school, and the lunch staff kept all of the milk in a big cooler that you would grab from right before punching in your lunch number. Girl ahead of me was my friend, but we had been arguing that day. I knew she didn't like chocolate milk, but I did. She grabbed the last one out of the cooler to spite me. While opening the cardboard container and taking a long sip, she discovered it was spoiled. Instant justice. Story 39. This'll probably get buried, but a few years ago it was snowing here in the UK. We only get snow in my part of the country maybe once every couple of years. I was driving home from work and everyone was obviously taking it slow and careful as not too many of us are used to driving in wintry conditions. I have to stop for gas, so I pull over in a garage, fill up, and go inside to pay. When I get inside, there's this freaking dude bro mouthing off at the staff for some reason or another. Not sure what he was mad about, but he was being a total smuck to the poor guys behind the counter, and their manager had to come out and calm him down. After he's finally calm, he goes to leave, and the manager says something like, "Have a good evening, drive safe." And for some reason, this amps the guy back up to 11. He starts going on like, "No, mate, no need." Points to his car. "See that thing? Subaru, Rally Edition, all-wheel drive, can handle freaking anything. And then he storms out. The manager just sort of sighs, shakes his head, and turns to serve me. I pay for my fuel, go outside, and get back in my car. As I'm opening the door, putting my wallet in my pocket and such, I hear a loud rev and spinning tires. Captain Subaru is roaring out of the petrol station, goes to turn to leave. The wheels turn, the car doesn't, and he slides straight into an enormous tree, which not only seriously damages his car, but deposits a few feet of snow from its branches and practically buries him. Story 40. This rich kid pulled up next to me at a red. At least I assume he was rich because he was driving one of the more recent Porsche models. He screams at me that he's going to run the red because the rules only apply to poor people like you. I think his ego was blocking his rearview mirror because I saw what he didn't. There was a cop chilling behind us with an eyebrow raised at the guy. So I do my best to pretend I didn't see the cop and I said to the little schmuck, "You can't run that red, you're too much of a wuss." Kid runs a red. I see the cop peel out from behind me into the lane the kid was in and pull him over. I look over at the cop as he passes me, and for a brief moment, I see the cop laughing. Story 41. My boss gave me a six-pack of beer for prom night and worked extra hard for him. I didn't really drink and tried to refuse, but he insisted. I put it in my car and figured I'd give it to a friend who drinks. Halfway into my shift, the owner of the restaurant came in and fired me because he saw the beer, obviously stolen because I was not of age, in my back seat. I looked at the head chef and he just acts like he's mad too. The owner walks me out to my car and asks why I would do that. I was a good worker for a year and a half or so. So I just told him, yeah, the head chef gave it to me. I have no idea why he didn't just tell you. Owner walked back in and fired the head chef. This guy was a big schmuck, so he went all ballistic. And the owner saw a side of him that the kitchen staff saw when it got really busy. The owner's actions really affected me. I think that's the first time someone ever really took a stand for me, especially over someone who was obviously making him more money. I will always remember that day. Story 42. Guy tailgating me in heavy rain on a road notorious for flooding, hydroplanes seconds after only passing me, hits both embankments, and starts screaming and crying like an infant. I very sweetly told him I was calling the police for him. He shrieked at a pitch I have never heard another grown man make, got in his car, and apparently, without learning his lesson, sped off. I half expected to find him in a ditch a mile down the road. Story 43. 4-lane road down to 2 due to construction. We were stuck at a traffic light for way too long because the light wasn't functioning properly to account for the reduced lanes. Finally, we're first in line waiting at the red light, and a PT Cruiser decides they're done waiting and pulls into the oncoming traffic lane to go through the red. They get to us at the front and have to stop because naturally an oncoming car is turning left into that lane. The oncoming car backs up to let the PY go, which they then go through the red. Oncoming car is an undercover cop. Cue the greatest instant karma scenario I have ever had the joy of experiencing. Story 44. That would be myself. My husband, then boyfriend, was carrying our dog's freshly filled water bowl from the kitchen sink to the feeding mat. The dog ran right into him and the water spilled all over the floor. I laughed my back off and called him an idiot. In the 2 minutes it took him to find the mop, I forgot the water was on the floor and slipped as I walked right through it to get to the dryer. I fell hard on the granite tile, had a broken arm, had a mild concussion, and received 8 stitches. Story 45. We were boarding a transatlantic flight coming home from the US to the UK. There were 9 seats across the jet, arranged as 3 sets of 3. Me and my siblings are sat in the first 3, then my parents have 2 at the middle seat. Another family of 5 takes up the last 4 seats in that row and 1 in the row behind. The other dad was very loudly and rudely complaining to the stewardess that he wanted the seat my dad was sitting in for his son sat in the row behind. It was clear to everyone that he had prioritized getting the front row extended leg room over having his own family sit together when he checked in, and he was now trying to intimidate the stewardess into giving him both. My dad tried to interrupt with the intention of offering to switch seats because he had already decided he didn't want to be sat next to this schmuck for 8 hours. The guy obviously expected him to say something else, so told my dad to screw off and mind your own business before he had a chance to speak. Stewardess asks everyone to stay calm and says she will be back in a minute. When she returns, she escorts my mom and dad into empty seats in first class, then comes back and says to the angry guy, "Problem solved, your son can now move." Stewardess had the biggest grin on her face, and the guy was so confused. He got what he wanted, but still felt like he had been screwed over. Somehow, he just didn't understand how. Mom spent the whole flight in first class. Dad let me and my 2 siblings go up front for 2 hours each and then use the last 2 hours himself. Top parenting. Story 46. Guy was stopped at a red light in the middle of a very busy intersection in a very busy part of my city. This was in the middle of summer, so there's a lot of people around. This guy has a very fancy BMW and he thinks he's so cool. He blasts his music really loudly and starts revving the engine. Light turns green and he does the whole tire screeching thing, except something doesn't go as planned. There's a strange sort of crunching sound and then a loud bang. This guy has to pull over to the side of the road in front of all the people he was trying to impress by being a total schmuck. Lots of laughs were heard from the people around. Instant karma. I don't know what really happened with the car, but I'm guessing some kind of gearbox mayhem. Story 47. I had an ongoing issue with people illegally dumping in my dumpster behind my business. For those unaware, it's far more expensive to have a dumpster at a commercial property than you might think. Mine shared with 2 other neighboring businesses and emptied 3 times a week. We pay $400 a month for the service, so when it's suddenly full of garbage that's clearly not for us, it's infuriating. I could never manage to catch people who did it, so I decided I'd install a camera. I was on the roof of my building running the wiring when, what do you know, some schmuck dumping carpet and yard waste in my dumpster. I opted to not confront him and just called my local police non-emergency line and gave them a plate number and description. Officer came by to verify the information with me, and as we're standing inside my shop talking, I noticed the same freaking guy just backed up to my dumpster. He must have missed a police car in front of my building or just didn't care. Officer made him empty all the crap he dumped back into his truck. Dude had to climb in the dumpster and got absolutely covered in yard waste. As soon as it was all piled back in his truck, including the cab since this was his second trip, the officer handed him a $500 illegal dumping ticket. The look on the guy's face was priceless. That same officer has since caught 4 other illegal dumpers thanks to my camera. I even posted a sign stating that it's being video recorded and still people dump. Now all I do is email the clip to my new cop buddy and he tracks them down. Story 48. This happened one snowy winter day, early afternoon, about 20 years ago. I was driving a 2-wheel drive pickup truck down a snowy road at a speed where I felt safe, roughly 30 miles per hour. Posted speed limit was 50 IIRC, when some guy in a Jeep Wrangler started trying to crawl up my exhaust. He's flashing his high beams and honking his horn, and I can see his arms waving wildly in my rearview mirror. It should be noted that there was like 5 or 6 inches of snow on the ground at this point, and the plows haven't run recently, so going fast isn't really an option. It should also be noted that there is a whole other lane directly to my left that he could use to pass me if he so chose. Anyway, given that, instead of just going around me like a normal human being, I decided to do what I usually do to schmuck drivers. I slowed down a little bit, put my window down, stuck my arm out the window, and waved it in a circle. The universal, or at least American, gesture of go around, and then I put my window back up. He finally got the message and pulled into the left lane and proceeded to fly past me as if I'm parked. He goes around a corner and I lose sight of him. By the time I get to that corner that he just went around, I see his Jeep sitting on its side in the ditch on the far side of the road with tire marks in the snow, showing everyone what had just transpired. I called the local police non-emergency number and reported a disabled vehicle at whatever road this was, I can't remember at the moment, but said I couldn't stop to help since there was no guarantee that I'd be able to get my truck moving again. They said that they would send a car around when they were able, and that's the end of it. Story 49. Freshman year high school, walking to class, some older kid is waltzing down the hallway with a pack of donuts. As we get closer, he opens the box of donuts as if to offer me one. I happily oblige and reach for one, only for him to snatch the box away from me and give me the classic, haha, got you type of attitude. Unfortunately for him, he pulled back a bit too quickly and sent the entire box of donuts into the garbage can in one quick gesture. The look on his face, priceless. It was awesome. Story 50. Got off the highway and turned into a road. I'm in the passenger seat. There was traffic in our lane and a car going the opposite way was trying to turn into a gas station on our side of the road, but there wasn't a legal place to turn into it. The car cut in front of us before we could scoot up enough and cut us off. They inched up waiting to safely continue to cross the 2 lanes on our side. They go. A police officer that just came off the highway slams into the car and runs into a light post. I watched the officer get out of the car, clearly angry. It may seem like the officer's fault, but it was the other driver because they weren't supposed to turn into the gas station from that side of the road. We didn't see what happened since our light turned green and the traffic started to move. Story 51. Wife and I were driving with our son to see his aunt who lives about an hour away. And we're on a straight that has a speed limit of about 50. It's a country highway with 1 lane each direction. Guy in a Mitsubishi Eclipse flies by us. He had to have been doing 80 or 90. Reckless, to say the least, but add in that it was raining and right before a turn and a car had just rounded that turn. This guy was beyond stupid. Could have ended us if another car was coming or if he slid out of control. Continued down that road, chatting with my wife about just what happened. Come around the corner, and guess who's there? Run his car into the guardrail. Mitsubishi Eclipse guy. He's not hurt. He's fired up and screaming at himself. Drove by him with the biggest cheese grin I could muster. Felt good to see that instant justice. And if any of these stories got to you, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.